Thanks for tuning in to Real Talk and Whatnot. I'm your host, Micah Diele. If you're new to the show, this is a podcast where I highlight the talented individuals who live within the Central Valley of California, as well as people in general who are passionate about what they do. This episode right here is about that second part, people in general who are passionate about what they do. It's the first time I've had that part on my podcast. I mean, I have had that part, but they've all been from the Central Valley, and this dude's from Canada. But before we get into that, let's talk about reviews and downloads. Now, once again, I want to remind you guys to download every single podcast episode with whatever podcast app you're using. If you're using Spotify or Apple Music, make sure you're leaving a review. Even if you don't have Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review on a computer through the iTunes app. Once again, shout out to Hugh, Ohio, and Anchorage, Alaska. Big fan base right there, and I just really appreciate the support. So if you guys want to follow me, see what I'm like, or watch the promos to all these things, just follow me on Instagram. That's micah.diele, MICAH.DIELE. Alrighty, let's jump into today's episode. Now, today's episode, I had the first virtual guest. It's a guy that goes by the name of Seth Macey, and he has a podcast called The Photographer's Mindset. Now, this is one of my favorite podcasts. It talks about the ins and outs of photography, talks about real-world examples, and how you can use those things and apply them to your own photography career. Now, Seth is a Canadian landscape, wildlife, and commercial photographer. He's big on preserving our environment, and he tries to do that through his wildlife photos by always keeping, a good distance like you're supposed to, unlike people who walk right up to animals. Anyways, we don't need to get into that. Now, I had a great conversation with Seth. We talked about social media. We talked about, just finding your true passion. We talked about, the ins and outs of photography. We talked about it all, honestly. And even if you're not into photography, I can guarantee you will find something useful from this podcast. So I'm going to stop rambling on. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Seth Macey. This is it. Real talk and whatnot.
Real talk. That's it. Real talk. Real talk. Real talk.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is Seth Macey. Seth, why don't you introduce yourself?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me, first of all.
Of course, no problem.
You're
my first
virtual guest.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool. And I'm coming at you from like a 300 square foot tiny home in the middle of the woods.
Oh, you live in a tiny home?
Yeah, I think it has to be under 500 square feet from what I've heard to qualify as one. So we're sitting at 300 flat.
Wow, really? You have your own little room in there?
Well, it's kind of like a giant room. There's like I wish I could give you a tour, but that won't go well just because my laptop's hooked up to all this audio stuff. But there's a little kitchen behind the laptop with a nice drink rack. I might add you some gin, some Jaeger, if that's your taste.
Dude.
Got a nice little living room. It's all cedar wood, a guitar hanging. Life's good, man. You don't need that
much. Dude,
much.
I actually did. I was like looking up. I was like, oh, what happens if I type Seth Macey on YouTube? I always just try to see my guest on, even if it's like someone like local. I always find some like stuff of them that
you do your research.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw a whole little concert of you, man.
Man, I wish I could get that taken off the internet. So
no,
brutal.
You're pretty good though. I mean, I didn't even know you played guitar until I was literally a couple minutes before, and I was like, oh, look at this dude.
Yeah. I actually went to school for 2 years for audio engineering, and it was kind of like a music program. And that's kind of been part of my journey. I went there thinking that's what I wanted to do after 4 years of marketing, and it wasn't. And
dude, I have a similar story, but yeah, go on.
Right? Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I guess we're kind of getting into some deep concepts right away, but
let's do it.
I think a lot of people invest a lot of time into something, and since so much time has been invested into it, they gotta like double down constantly and keep going to it, even when they know in their heart it's not something they want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this case, this was, something that allowed me to understand that it's not what I want to do, and for that it was like such a blessing. Because I don't know, just the way I like to look at things is when you do something and you hate it, like at least right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And all those years in university and this program I did, this music program, the one thing that never left me was photography, right? So having a certain level of self-awareness, I think I figured out that this is something that's going to stick with me for the long haul.
Yeah, and then I think that's important. And then so when did photography come into your life, or when did it actually start?
Probably, I don't know, I get this question a lot. If you ask me to pick an age, I would probably say 17 is when I was first fiddling with a camera.
Mm-hmm.
I've told this story a bunch, but I love telling it every time. It was just my neighbor had just a basic starter Canon camera, nothing
Like
fancy.
a T3i or something like that.
I couldn't even tell you, man. And a lot of times, we're in I say Northern Ontario. It's not really Northern Ontario, but it's north of Toronto. So that's considered like wilderness cottage country.
Mm-hmm.
And, as fun as it is around there's only so much you can do as the days were like, you're not close to movie theaters. You're not close to bars. Like you got to find ways to entertain yourself, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I completely understand.
So he had a camera and, we'd spend days just trying to take a picture of something different every single day.
That's a good way to spend time.
It was a great way to spend time. Like you're outside in nature, you're with your friend, you're getting to express your creativity. It was awesome. And I just remember being so stoked on all the photos and like remembering that it was all I wanted to do. And the best part about it is that it was during a time when Facebook was pretty new. Instagram was not
pre-social media.
Pre-social media. So like, I'm really grateful that I got to suck at photography, even though I thought these photos were amazing.
Yeah.
I got to suck, and that was fine. I didn't have to go to my Explore page and just look at these incredible people and kind of feel bad about myself. Like I got to grow and just do it because I loved it,
Mm-hmm.
So for that, I'm really grateful. I almost feel like people who are picking up a camera for the first time are at a huge disadvantage just naturally right out of the gate, because there's all these incredible creatives that, we look up to, and that can be kind of, it's the word
overwhelming,
jealous?
I feel like.
Overwhelming. And you instantly think, oh, wow, look at my photos compared to that. And it makes you, I feel for some people, I bet you have put the camera down permanently. And that's so sad.
For sure. I mean, even me, because I'll give you a little background of like how I got into photography.
Yeah.
So I always, me and my buddy in high school, we shot these videos on, do you remember the flip cameras? It was like a camera, but then a part of it flipped and it was instantly a USB drive. So like, and I graduated high school like 2011. So around like 2008, 2009, this was going on.
Right.
And so we would do we did like video a week, and we made like skits and stuff like that. And, we had fun doing it, and I really wanted to do video in college. And then like some things happened for one reason or another, like I ended up just going for like history, then anthropology, then, just down this rabbit hole of I'm going to major in this, I'm going to major in this. And then I ended up finally getting a bachelor's degree in educational studies because I thought I wanted to be a teacher for a long time. And I wouldn't mind teaching like film or photography, but it seems like for some reason, those jobs aren't as prevalent as you would expect them to be in a digital world. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So during basically, I hit up my buddy for this brand called Prana had this competition to make a video about your dream job. And so I hit up my buddy who was a videographer, and basically since that video I've been like completely submersing myself in it, and that was about 2 years ago. And then I really grew in the pandemic. It really helped me grow because it just every day I was what am I going to create? Like I got to create something. And so like, and even like I feel like the first year of photography, you're like, I don't even know if I'm getting better. Like, am I getting better?
That's every day for me.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Like you feel like you're faking it. You feel like people are like, oh, I like your work.
Man.
I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. And I like what you said about the pandemic. I mean, I always, in recent chats and podcasts or whatever, when I talk about the 2020 pandemic and how it was good for me, I always start off by saying like, it's been horrible for a lot of people.
You have to. You
obviously
feel like guilty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's quite obvious. Like a lot of people, have lost loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are struggling mentally. I think everybody is. I think just to a certain extent it differs, right? Everyone's circumstances are different, but there was an opportunity, I think there still is, to kind of look inwards, figure out your priorities, and there was tons of time to create. I mean, the podcast that, my podcast that you listened to, we kind of got hooked up through. I mean, that was a total pandemic project.
I didn't even think about that. That makes sense. Like you probably just submerge yourself in it because I mean, you had time and everybody else had time.
Right. And I mean, I'm one who goes stir crazy when they're not working towards something, right? If that makes any sense. So
No, I get it.
During the pandemic, I was, on my way to financial independence solely from photography, and like was just starting to maybe get there. And then my revenue went to zero because, everyone's freaking out. Everyone's kind of saving their money, not sure how this is going to play. This is new for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for a month, I'm kind of sitting at home, just like having that sense of feeling like you're not in control, right?
Yeah.
Helpless, right? So, I mean, starting the podcast was a creative project, and this can, relate to anybody and anything, was a way to like kind of take some control back in life, right? And start something creative. And it's been a lot of fun. And here we are now because of it, just because you and I got hooked up through that, and we're doing an awesome show.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so I found you, and this is how I believe I found you. I don't know exactly, but I think that Matt, you know what I mean?
Yeah, Matt Chase.
Matt Chase, yes, Upstate Face on Instagram. You guys can
Great
follow
photographer.
him. Oh man, yeah. So I randomly ran into him in Yosemite one day. We were supposed to catch Firefall a couple years ago. The conditions weren't right, and then we ended up going to the sunset spot, and like it ended up being like a horrible sunset. Like right as it was about to set, clouds came in and ruined it, and all the photographers, yeah, exactly. But all the photographers left, and then it was just me, my buddy Jimmy, and Matt, and then his, I believe his girlfriend, all hanging out, talking to each other. And it was just like a weird thing where we set up our camera right next to him, and then we instantly started talking, and like none of us cared that the sunset wasn't there. But I think I saw him repost one of your pictures, then I clicked on it, and then like the first day I followed you, I listened to like an Instagram live chat that you had with I God knows who, you know what I mean? I don't know. But Instagram,
I don't know either.
Yeah, Instagram live chat. But then I asked one of the questions, I was just like, oh, what's your go-to camera bag? Like, what do you shoot with? And I don't know, just like the way that you were delivering it. And then I was just like, oh, let me check out this podcast. And then ever since then, I've been hooked, dude. So
cool. Power of the internet. There you go.
Dude, seriously.
The digital era is so crazy and cool when used what's the word? Beneficially, correctly.
So I have a
efficiently.
question. I have a question right on that topic. You often talk about how useful social media can be, but also how it can affect your mental health. Now, how do you personally go about balancing it in order to make sure your mind stays healthy? Because I just actually, right before we logged on, read on your Instagram, you're like, I delete Instagram on the weekends, ask me why.
Yep.
So
every weekend. And the ask me why is to spark a conversation to maybe inspire people to do the same thing. So to answer your first question, to maintain, I guess, sanity in the digital world.
Yeah.
Do you remember, did you ever have like AOL or MSN or any instant messenger? Right. You got home from school and you talked to your friends, right?
Yeah. Hey, I mean, what was your username on that?
It was just my email. But no, I always start here because this was a time, like if you recall, and people listening will know, like you got home from school, you signed in and you signed off, right? Mm-hmm. You signed off, like you had to go do homework, dinner, whatever. But now we're in a day and age where, you signed out of that AI or that IM messenger for the last time at some point, and now ever since you've always been connected. Yeah. You have access to news 24/7. People have the ability to contact you at all hours of the day. Mix that in with people posting their highlights. Your brain is not hardwired to be able to handle all that. I think technology has progressed at a rate that's so fast that the physical primal brain has not been able to keep up. And with anything in life, when you go to the gym, like you go home and you rest, and you grow when you rest, right? Your muscles aren't growing when you're at the gym. When you come home from work, you're not working, you're taking some time to yourself. So I think the important part with social media to have like a healthy relationship with it is to carve out time for, and be very diligent and very direct with it, carving out time when you're going to use it and when you're not going to use it. And, that can be as simple as not first thing in the morning, I guess, or it can be something like not using it on weekends. Mm-hmm. And so I put that in my bio just so, I get the odd message of like, hey, like, what's this about? And I say, well, let me tell you. And people are like, huh, maybe I'll try that. And for the people I know that have done, well, first I think it started, why I started doing that is I deleted it for an entire weekend as a social experiment on the recommendation of another photographer friend. And it's funny, my biggest fear, dude, was that halfway through the week of no Instagram, my biggest fear was like, I don't want to come back. This is so awesome. And no, dead serious. And like, it was almost like scary because I know how much my creative identity is centered around this app, which is so alarming. But then it just progressed to like, hey, I kind of like this. So let's find some balance. Let's just delete it on weekends. Let's, spend time with my girlfriend. Let's go for hikes. Let's see friends. Let's spend the time shooting. Right.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of stuck, I guess.
No, that's really cool. And I think it's just the self-awareness to even like do that. Because I feel like a lot of people, like even me, like I know I shouldn't be on it as much as I am. You know what I mean? And it just is like one of those things where it becomes a habit to where you look down and you're like, how did
muscle memory?
Yeah, exactly.
So day one, if you do the week without social media, if you delete the app like off your smartphone, like start with Instagram, just like buy Instagram, you'll find that you'll open your phone and your finger will go looking for it and you won't even notice it. And you'll snap out of it and go, holy shit. Like that did that without me even thinking. And that's going to freak you out big time.
Yeah, make you aware of like how, like, because you don't think like, it's addicting, but you're like, oh, whatever. Like, I mean, that's just kind of like that's what you tell yourself. You're like, oh, it's not really that addicting, but like, I've deleted it in the past before, but like, it's just one of those things where it's just, I'm trying to figure out how I can have a healthy balance in the sense of, because during the week, it's like, so I'm a photographer, videographer, and then I'm a high school substitute teacher as well. That's what my three things I do. And I like that. I like that because while I'm substituting, I can kind of work on my own photography and things like that. Right. So kind of, it's like getting paid while I'm getting paid. But nice. But it just is like during those times of just like, let's say I'm editing a video or editing photos, it's just like I almost am getting interrupted. You know what I mean? My creative process is getting stopped by just muscle memory or, the addiction. And so,
right.
I guess, I mean, I should start, I should try a week just to see how it is.
You should try a week.
Yeah, because I feel like it's just like, oh, I have a group message with my friends, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, okay, none of those things is like, in a week, is it really going to make a difference?
That's
you know
just
what I mean?
It. So, I mean, you have all these massive feelings of FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah, that's good.
Or did I get an important message from a brand? Or are people worried about me? And here's the real reality, right? The people who are close with you, like friends or family, whatever, they have your number. And the rest of the online community, I guess we'll call them, and this might be hard for some people's ego to hear, is like, nobody really cares. Nobody cares that you're gone for a week. You might have some people being like, that's kind of weird, but I mean, you'll be back. It's really not that big of a deal. That's just kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, like the muscle memory, it's compulsion, right? And I'm not trying to paint myself as some like picture perfect Instagram relationship guru by any means. Like, sometimes I catch myself, but deleting it at the source is a good place to start. It's like on a weekend, just see ya from your phone. Now, what are you going to do? You have to physically go through all those steps to re-download if you really had a craving. And there's more barriers for shame, self-shame in a way.
Yeah. I could definitely see like it's like, if you go through all these barriers, it's like, hey, dude, like you couldn't.
Then you have
wait
a problem.
week. Yeah.
Then at the very least, you've made a discovery about yourself. And I guess like, I'm not a physician or a psychiatrist or any of that stuff, but at the root of all addiction is you're covering a problem, whether you're addicted to working out, whether you're addicted to food, gambling, whether it's social media, you're really just filling a void of something else that's unsatisfying in your life. So if you discover that, you can maybe start working towards what that issue is and living more wholesomely, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. And I think us as creators have an even like harder time in the sense of like you're saying in the beginning, we're always seeing someone else's work. We're always, just
best
seeing
work.
Yeah, the
best work.
The best of the best. You're seeing
absolutely
all these pages post all these things, and it's just, It's overwhelming. And I think recently I had some self-realization because so I edited this photo and it was like I had a photo of a moon and a photo of firefall and I combined them, right? And
Nice.
like I kind of knew like going into it, I was like, this is the type of stuff that like you know what I mean, just like the Instagram accounts, like the big brand ones. It's just like something that's like it's a composite, but it's not too much of a composite, you know what I mean? And like it got shared more than any of my other photos, but it was like so not satisfying to me because like I didn't necessarily like, it wasn't like one of those photos where like I'm so happy I finally got it, you know what I mean? It was kind of like I
Yeah.
created it, I thought it would do good, and then it really blew up and I was just like, I think I have better photos than this on my page, and you guys are choosing to pick like this cliche photo. You know what I mean? And I think I heard you talking about on your podcast something about how like it's just like you for your wildlife photographer. So you go out, you know like you take time researching these animals, you follow their prints.
Hours, dude.
Yeah. And then
Hours.
and then I think you heard you say something about how like a photo, like you have like a photo of a squirrel, like or something like that, right? That like did really well or something.
It had chipmunk.
Yeah. And I'm sure like that just like eats your heart when you're thinking about it. Like whether it's like
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
It's a mixed bag because, you know, I like to vouch for the small critters because on Instagram and the wildlife community, you know, the big cats and the big bears and they get all the attention, but like
the heavy
if you
hitters.
yeah, the big, you know, the big trout, like big animals. But if you really watch like a red squirrel or a chipmunk, they work so damn hard and they're so cool. So it was cool to see a chipmunk get some online recognition. It sounds so stupid, right? Because it's like outside right now, busy gathering nuts, and like we're worried about this kind of stuff. But no. But at the same time, to your point, it's like I had a shot of a wolf from Banff, which is, you know, a once in a lifetime for a lot of people, and it underperformed on social media compared to a chipmunk. So it kind of goes to what you're saying, and like people want what they want. Like maybe a little cute furry thing is a crowd favorite. Mind you, a wolf in the wildlife community is also a crowd favorite. Those are likely to just like air quote blow up. But you know, to take this concept further, I think what it comes down to is teaching yourself really just not to care what happens.
Yeah.
You know, I used to post a photo I'd sunk so much time and energy into, and you know, it wouldn't do so well, and it would be a day ruiner. And I got to a point where that was just kind of ridiculous. So developing a little bit of apathy with an inconsistent platform, because we all know it's inconsistent, right? You can post something so lame and it just blows up, or you can post something incredible and it flops.
Yeah.
So I think just coming to terms with the inconsistency and developing a level of apathy is a good place to start, so that it doesn't really hinder your motivation to continue to do what you're doing, especially if you like it.
No, I agree. And I think it's similar to how people's grids, you know, a lot of people are worried about, you know, how is the grid going to look when you go to my page? And for a while, like I was like, oh, I have to like shoot this way because I want it to match. And then it's like, why am I already hindering my creative ability to maybe do something more specific?
Yeah.
And like, sometimes it just works out, you know what I mean? Like you go on a trip, you're going to naturally probably, if you're all in the same area, your grid's going to line up a lot better than it would if it was a picture from here, a picture from there. But I think it's just little things like that. And like you're saying, the self-realizations of like, hey, maybe I should really just post what I want to post, because at the end of the day, your opinion's the only one that matters on social media. Like I used to, I got to post in the evening because people are more active in the evening. Now I'm just like, whatever. Like this is my page. And I think since I've had that attitude, like I've grown more as a photographer, and just in general, just I think people want to see people being them, because this is such a fake society nowadays.
Well, think about the musical artists you listen to and why they're so famous. It's because they've developed a style they thought was cool. You know, there's not a lot of artists in any genre, whether it's art or like painting, photography, sculptors, musicians. There's not a lot of people who raise or level up in, I guess, fame or online recognition by doing what's already been done. I mean, a lot of people who are getting online recognition are, you know, rowing their own boat. And I think that's really cool, just to kind of do things like that. instead of posting because you are trying to keep in mind of what other people might want. I think that's silly.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And then, this is a random thought right now, but you had, tell me the story about, is it the river otters, or what did you just recently have a picture of?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, dude.
I know the one. What do you want to hear about it?
I just like your process of like, I don't think a lot of people realize how much time goes into wildlife photography. And so just kind of your process in capturing the shots that you captured.
I'll tell you how that happened from start to finish. So first of all, you need to love being outside to be a wildlife photographer. And you need to be okay with coming back with no content 99% of the time. I mean, I don't know what the demographic of listeners here are, but I assume landscape, nature. It doesn't really matter whether it's portrait, landscape, architecture, whatever. Mm-hmm. If you're one of those photographers, you go out and you know that building's going to be there, right? You know that mountain's going to be there. You know that the sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. With wildlife, it is so hit and miss. Just because you saw tracks one day doesn't mean they're going to be there. These animals are transient, right? So I think the first thing wildlife photography teaches you is to set realistic expectations, right? Because happiness is expectations minus reality.
Oh, that's right? Good, yeah.
So if you really go out and wildlife photography's taught me so much in my life, dude. It's taught me patience, that if you just keep thinking about something, eventually it'll happen. I will get to the river otters, I promise.
No, you're good.
But I'll get into it right now. So with the river otters, I think I went out, I saw coyotes out on the frozen lake, and I was like, I wonder where they're heading to. It's winter. They'll be easy to track. So went out, tracked them for a bit, and then ended up losing the trail. I'm snowshoeing at this point on a frozen lake, and I'm coming back and I see all these like, it kind of looks like somebody dragging a sled or a toboggan of a child. Oh. But I know that because these sled marks are going underneath tree trunks and stuff like that. And I'm like, these aren't people, and they wouldn't be this far out in the wilderness. And so I got back home and I Googled, and I'm like, oh, these are river otter tracks. So that's neat. Pretty easy to track in the winter. So let's just kind of go to that area and see what happens. So, they switch from being nocturnal in spring, summer, and fall to being diurnal, which means they're active during the day. So I'm like, okay, this seems pretty easy. We'll just hang out around there. They'll pop out. It'll be cool. And again, because I've seen so many people that I follow who have river otter photos, so I'm just like, oh, okay, like they're getting these. It's probably a piece of cake. I went out day after day after day, snowshoeing, coming back with nothing, but just repeated doing that. Just kept thinking about it. What can I change this time? Should I change the time of day? Even bought a trail camera.
I see you randomly post different animals that run by it.
Yeah. And even on one outing on snowshoes, I fell through the lake, which was like super dangerous.
Dude, I was about to ask you, how do you
man.
know? How do you know like this is thick enough, or do you just kind of guess it?
Just from growing up here, just at a certain temperature, after a certain amount of time, it's a certain level of thickness. Mm-hmm. But I went too close to shore near a marshy area, and they swim under the ice and beaver swim under the ice. So it makes it thinner. So it was just a rookie mistake, and I fell through, and it was like so many emotions in freezing cold water. Camera goes instantly up in the air because I always walk with my camera in my hands. I like throw it. I lift my knees up so that my snowshoes don't sink into the muck below and like trap me. Crawl out on my elbows, and I was like, all right, I'm going home for the day.
How far out are you?
At this point, I can touch.
No, but I mean,
because I'm so
how far out from like wherever your car's parked?
So I was walking back to the tiny home, so it was probably sopping wet in like thermal gear and a parka. It was like probably a 30-minute walk of shame.
Oh man.
Took a couple days off, but got back at it, kept going, kept seeing new tracks, couldn't pin them down. I was defeated. Usually in the past, every time I had thought of like a certain outcome, it eventually happened, and I'm still a firm believer in that because I didn't end up getting.
And at this point, how much time had passed since maybe the first tracks to when you're kind of getting frustrated? Couple months. Yeah. I think
a couple months, and then and I'm just like, you know what? I wrote it off, And I was like, you know what? It wasn't meant to be. I tried my best, so I wasn't like too down on myself. But then, so I guess it was a month ago, I finally did get the shot. I was out just on land this time because, it was a race against time because I thought I need to be on the frozen lake. And the lake had thawed, or it was too thin at this point.
Yeah.
So, but luckily there was like a little point of land where, kind of where they had been. So I was like, you know what? I'll go walk around there, just kind of see what happens, and go out for a walk with my camera. No expectations, right? And
It always
I even
happens
had
like that.
yeah, I even had an internal dialogue in my head. I'm just like, you know what? You're out here just to be outside, just enjoy that. And not 5 minutes later, I see them, right? And it's just like the universe finally opened up and gave me a gift, because it was like, I truly believe it was like, all right, you're ready for this now. And they were there. And then I spent the afternoon shooting them, and it was awesome. But the point of the story is, one is that if you keep thinking on an outcome, eventually it will happen, like we just said. And that's going back to lessons that wildlife photography has taught me just with life in the short time I've been doing it. And when you kind of just let go and stop forcing things will appear for you when you're ready. But it was 3 months, man. And it was a lot of, mileage, a lot of, I guess, a dangerous situation at one point, but perseverance pays. So, I mean, if that resonates with anybody listening, that's great.
No, dude, that's cool. And I think and it's so cool because I feel like the shots you did end up getting, like they were they're like eating a fish, or they're eating, you know what I mean? And it's just like so much more unique than just here's a river otter. Here's river otter swimming. And it's just like all your trials and errors to get to that point. And then when you're
stars align, man.
Yeah. And then you're finally like, okay, let's just enjoy where I'm at. And then of course, boom, right then and there. And then what do you, what's your go-to choice for your lens for wildlife photography? What do you shoot with?
So I use a 150 millimeter to 600 millimeter zoom, which is going to sound like an absolute bazooka to most people.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like that too. I just got a 70 to 200. You know what I mean? And I was just like,
which is small compared to this.
Yeah. And I'm always like, I'll use like my crop sensor to make it go like another like 50, or something like that. But And so, I mean, I don't know. Talk about like your gear, if you don't mind, just and like your process of capturing these animals. I know obviously it varies, but just some insight.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions on gear that people may agree with or they might not. So yeah, I'm shooting 150 to 600 millimeter from Sigma. The f-stop, it goes down to 6.3, I believe. So it's not very good in low light.
Yeah, but is the bigger the lens, like I haven't had anything that big. So it's like bigger the lens, it's harder. The f-stop's going to be a little more higher in general.
Well, so you can buy like 400 millimeter f2.8.
Well, yeah, but how much money?
But I mean, do you have $10,000?
Yeah.
It's called a funeral lens for a reason, because that's how much it costs to have one. I've heard that. But so I'm shooting with that because, it's in my opinion, the best value. It's the best value. You're paying like, I think $1,000 or $1,200 US. It's a great entry level. Like, I mean, I only started wildlife photography a year ago.
I was about to ask that. Like, how long have you been into it? And then, so, I mean, if you don't mind this segue real quick, how...
Yeah, we'll take a little branch off here.
Yeah, so, so you do photography as a job, right? As a living?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which I don't post online.
Yeah, exactly. And so maybe talk about like your, not personal life, but like your job version, you know what I mean? Because I think I only know you as a wildlife photographer, but I kind of like know just because I've been to your website. I just, you know what I mean? Because your website's a little more, it's always good feeling that people go to your website, right? Because I feel like I put
everybody needs to have a website, dude.
Yeah.
Because it sets you apart.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had people like reach out to me who's like, oh, I've seen your pictures. And I'm like, how have you seen my pictures? Like I have them on my website, but like I never post any people on my Instagram. And it's always like makes me feel good when I realize like, oh, people are going to my website. Like it's not just out there in a void.
Right. Well, here's the thing too. Like Betty Sue from Nebraska can go get an Instagram. Okay. So in that sense, you're on the same playing field as that, whether she has a smartphone or whatever. But as soon as you get a website that says like, hey, I'm a photographer, and you have all your work in like a www space, you're legit. Which is really cool. So like, I mean, you can go and build opportunities for yourself, and you can direct, companies and brands to that. I mean, companies and brands, if they even find you through Instagram, they're going to your website. It's just a matter of fact. So like, if you don't have that, you don't really stand out.
Yeah, that's
If
true.
that makes sense,
No, that does
right?
make sense. And that's kind of like, I got one because that's kind of what I felt like as well. I felt if I didn't have a website, then people wouldn't take me as serious. And so I got a website, and it felt like really useless in the first 3-4 months. You know what I mean? Just felt like,
Right.
why do I have this? And then the moment somebody says like, oh, I realized you had a website, I'm just like, cool. Like, I don't know, like, just like it served its purpose. Like,
Yeah, I guess you got to figure out what purpose you want it to serve. Like for me, it's a landing page for bigger opportunities and to sell presets, which is like a good amount of my passive income. It's also raining here. I don't know if you can hear that, so it's gonna be ambient for everyone
oh,
listening.
cool. I can't hear it, but maybe.
Okay, cool.
When it's
Yeah,
louder.
we're in a rainstorm here, so it's all good. But yeah, man, I think having a website is so important, and it's you should have one.
No, I agree.
just say I don't know what else really more to say about it. But what we were talking about before the
Like, so what was your job? Like, I guess my question is something about your job being like, taking pictures of people and stuff like that. And then how did that transition into wildlife? Like, when was that? You know what I mean? What made you think like?
So like my Instagram, for example, is basically a giant passion project, right? Like this is everything I want to do. I mean, commercial photography and working for brands is fun, but it's not like I don't wake up every morning and go, yes, I get to shoot for Yeti today. I mean, like that might be, maybe Yeti's a bad example because they're like super on brand.
Yeah.
But I don't know, pick like a cashmere sweater company, which is gonna be like, hey Seth, here's $600, take 30 photos. I'm gonna be like, great, I'm gonna do a good job, my best that I possibly can do. But it's not gonna like really get me going. It's not gonna light a fire. So like my Instagram and my professional life are very segregated, if that makes sense. Just because I want my social media to resonate or to display what I ideally would want to be doing all the time. But I don't know if that really answered your question.
No, they get that did. And then I guess just like, so a year ago, you basically said like, was it during quarantine that you kind of were like, hey, I want to focus on this wildlife?
Yeah. Because what are you gonna do? Like, I can't go shoot brands. I can't see people for portraits. You can't travel. What are you gonna do? Just stop shooting? You got to pivot, right? You got to pivot with everything. And so, I had already had friends and people in my community that were into wildlife, like Brooke Littlebear, Dave Sanford. These are all like kind of people who I know and who are in my inner circle. And I'm like, what they're doing seems like a lot of fun. How do I start down that path? And, it started with buying a lens and then being terrible with that lens for an extended period of time, being like, holy shit, this is heavy.
I'm about to ask, how heavy is that? It's probably
well, like when you first pick it up, you're like, oh, this is heavy. And then you think, oh yeah, but like you can manage it. But then like you try walking 10 miles.
Yeah. Well, and then like when you're holding it up, I assume like, you know what I mean? You're trying to get a steady shot, but you're like, I don't want
and
my
I
shutter
hate
speed.
tripods.
Yeah.
I hate tripods.
And then you don't want to worry about your shutter speed being too high, too low. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, minimum shutter speed on that at full focal length 600 is 1/1000th.
Oh, damn. And so
just because there's so much shake, right?
Yeah.
When you're so zoomed in, what's the rule? It's like 1.5 times your focal length should be your shutter speed. The denominator number.
That's what I've heard as well.
I'm like not a specs and tech guy. Like I just kind of, if it works for me, it works for me. Like if we can, I guess we'll go back here because you're asking about gear, right? And I said I had some opinions on it.
Mm-hmm.
And like, cause I get so many questions about gear and I don't know, I'm interested to hear your thoughts too, but like in the most humble way, like if you gave me a Rebel T3i, like I'd do fine. It's a camera. It has limitations, of course, but it's not, I think a lot of people rely on, megapixels and the dollar sign is like a safety blanket.
Yeah. After 20 megapixels, like, does it really have a difference to me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, but like the naked eye is not really going to tell that. Maybe when you're zooming in Lightroom or Photoshop, you're going to tell, but like not really, you know what I mean? And I don't know.
It's a safety blanket, right? It's this, I have an R5 now I'm going to be good.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, I can't imagine how disappointing that would be. Like I shoot with a 6D, which is pretty, like at this point, I guess, dated, very middle grade camera. You know, I don't have the best wildlife lens in the world, but what that does is what it's done is it's forced me to learn how to get the kind of shots that I'm aspiring to with technical limitations, so that eventually when I do upgrade, like I've at least learned the fundamentals, if that makes sense, instead of relying on the gear itself. It'd be like Tom Brady is good because if you put him in any pair of running shoes, he's still going to be amazing, right? But he's going to be better in better running shoes, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the analogy I like to use.
Like for example, that's true. That's really true.
Yeah, like for example, with my 6D, it's 20 some odd megapixel, and the only reason that hurts me at times is because when I crop in, I lose quality because you're so far from animals a lot of the time. From like an ethical standpoint too, you're not supposed to get too close. So like for me, that's an example of, I've hit my wall with this camera. Maybe it's time to start looking to upgrading, as opposed to, if I upgrade, I'll be way better. Like, you know what I mean? You see the two differences in thought.
I completely understand. So,
right?
So before so when the R5 and R6 came out, I bought the EOS R. You know what I mean? The original one. You know what I mean? But it's funny because, like, I had the T7i before that, and I had just bought it, and my friend was trying to get, I forget what camera. He was trying to get me to get this other Canon camera. But regardless, I think I wouldn't have had to get an upgrade. But I got the T7i, and I like video a lot. And the thing with the T7is or any of the Ts in Canon is just in low light video, it's pretty hard. Like, it's pretty bad. As soon as you turn up the ISO to 500, it gets pretty grainy. And so, but before I got bought a new camera, I told myself, I was like, you need to just prove to yourself, like, hey, you can make a good video with this T7i. And I made this like little short about because I like to run a lot, so I made it about running, and it's just this little short film that I posted on my Instagram. And like, I don't know, when I was filming it, I feel like it's one of those things when you're filming something or taking pictures, you're like, I don't know if I got any good shots. But like when you go back and post, I think a lot of people think it's all about taking a good photo, but I think with today's day and age, you can really like take an okay photo and make it good in post-production. And I think that's
amen to that.
Yeah, and I think it's often overlooked. Everyone's like, you need to get the best photo in camera, or else like you're not a real photographer, or you know what I mean? Like just the older generation kind of is like, you didn't make sure your settings are right, perfect conditions right then and there. And I'm like, I like taking a photo.
I mean, we should strive for that.
Yes,
of course.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, because like my first time going to Banff, I had a Rebel 12 megapixel. And I'm seeing all these people I look up to. Like, this is when I'm pretty fresh into photography. I'm like, how do I get my photo to look like that? You know, at least as close as I can. And it was all post-processing. I mean, that was the only way. And going back to my point of like, when you have limitations with gear, it forces you to find a way, right? And for me, that was like, you know, I learned Lightroom really quick because of that, like at least the fundamentals of Lightroom, just because I was reverse engineering photos on limited gear.
Yeah. And I have photos from a road trip that I went on. So right after I graduated college, it's kind of like that weird time where I'm like, I graduated, I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
You're like, now what? Yeah,
exactly. Like post-graduation blues. And like I had this it's like I don't know what it is. It's like a Canon shock camera or something like that, where like you can zoom in a whole bunch with it, but it's not like you can take off a lens or anything. And I just took that around and I took a whole bunch of photos with it, video of the trip. And I mean, I had a blast doing it, but it takes like AA batteries. Like that's the type of camera this is, you know what I mean? So like I literally record for 30 seconds and it's on low battery. Like I bought a huge giant case of like AA batteries for this trip because I just was like, I want to record it. I want to do it. Nice. But like I came back, I had like the saturation setting on like high in camera. Like it was just like when I look back and posted them, like I laugh. But I've taken those same photos and it's probably like absolute max 20 megapixels, but I don't even think that, you know what I mean?
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever scroll down your Instagram feed and just go, wow, what was I doing?
Yeah, exactly. I was really in this green phase over here, like, I don't know.
Yeah, man, I do that all the time. It's such a nice little stroll down memory lane. See how far you've come?
Yeah, every now and then I archive like a few of them in the sense of like, I don't want to delete them, but I'm like, I think that
You don't want to be as good as your worst image type of idea.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. That's fair. I mean, and it comes back down to, it's all about you. I mean, if you're doing that solely because you want to, then sure, great. But I mean, I know what you're saying. Like if somebody lands upon a page or a post that's kind of maybe subpar and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
You don't really want people seeing that.
Or it's just like when you go back and if you have that reaction, it's like, okay, I'm in control of this. Like I can take it off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, I mean, I don't even know where we're off on this conversation, but I really like the subject on your podcast, or the couple times you mentioned it, of the reticular activating system. And I was just, exactly. And so I truly find a really interesting part of the brain and everything. And I was wondering if you could go into detail for those people who may not know what it is.
Right. So I know the very basics of it. Like I don't know the neuroscience, I'm just
No, and I just mean the basics.
But yeah. No, the general idea behind it is that we literally have it hardwired into our brain to start looking for things of the most importance to us. Like picture yourself as a hunter and gatherer a million years ago. I mean, you're naturally going to be more attentive to the color red if it's berries on a tree, right? And you start seeing those much more easily. For me, it's like, oh, I want a bird of prey, like an eagle or a shot of a hawk or something, and now I see them everywhere because I'm looking for them. Whereas it's not that there's just suddenly more hawks in the sky. It's that I'm seeing them more now because I've put it into my consciousness to be aware and on alert for them. It's just like, when like, I don't know, what do you have like when you're looking to buy a new car, right? And you start seeing that car everywhere on the road. Like I bought a Jeep 2 years ago, and leading up to the purchase, all I saw was Jeeps. I would drive and be like, Jeep.
Yeah.
Jeep. Wow, there's a lot of Jeeps on the road.
I feel like whenever your friend gets a new car, all of a sudden you see that car everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so it's not that there's more Jeeps suddenly. It's that your brain is molding and changing itself, the plasticity of it, to pay more attention to what it values and deems important. And I think that built into our hardwiring, we can use that to our advantage, right? Like if you just constantly focus on, I want to make $1 million. Like your brain is going to find and look at and search for things that are going to do that for you.
Yeah. And I've heard you say writing something down is like so beneficial in the sense of,
I write everything, man.
It kind of makes it like real, I don't know. It just makes it more apparent, puts it in your face, and makes you realize like this is what I want.
Yeah, and especially if you read it every day, right? Like when it's in your face, because then you can't ignore it. Like there was at a point where I had like a lot of credit card debt when I was younger and stupider. Maybe not too long ago. I don't know. It's been a while. But like I literally changed the background on my iPhone just to the number 0. Right? Uh-huh. So every time I opened my phone, I saw the number 0, which was like telling my brain like balance to 0, balance to 0, balance to 0. And like my credit card debt was gone in like a month.
Man, yeah, that's
so
good.
Like I just love that. And I have a list of goals in my dresser that I've written on a sheet of paper and taped them. That so when I, open my drawer or my dresser in the morning to get a shirt and get dressed for the day, like I'm forced to read them. Right. And the idea going back to the reticular activating system is that you keep putting that in your mind over and over and over and over again, whether you like it or not. You're going to build strategies to hit those outcomes. So like I'm a big advocate for people just using their physiology and their hardwiring to their advantage, because like why not? Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's built in.
It's literally there for you to do this.
Yeah, and I think,
but like it's there for the primal sense of like to find food or like to look for a predator. But I mean, in this sense, we can use the 2 million year old brain to our advantage to reach our desired outcomes.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because, like, you were saying on your podcast how, like, when you first started wildlife, obviously you probably didn't notice half these things, you know what I mean? But now
way.
I find it really interesting when you're like, oh, like you send like a broken stick, or you know what I mean, or something, and post it on social media, and you're like, moose have been here, or it's just things like that it's like you never would have realized it, but now it's almost like heightening your senses. And I think that like if it touches like earlier what we were talking about, how social media and technology has almost developed too fast for us to keep up with it mentally, you know what I mean? And I think it's just really interesting, or the point of, I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, I was so when you start a sentence and you don't know where it's going. But
here, I'll help you out with it.
there
if
we
you
go.
don't mind.
Thank you.
So I think what social media has done, and this is proven scientifically, is it's reduced our attention span. And there's a lot of arguments for whether that is, a step backwards in terms of human evolution, or if that is actually progress in the sense of, when you see your friend, they scroll so fast and you're like, how are you even consuming? But I think what's happening is people are deciding, at least in the social media and digital world, what is a priority to them instantaneously, right? And so I think we're moving in a direction where what we really care about gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And, the one detrimental part to that is that social media and Instagram knows that. So they feed you more of it and they feed you more of it. But going back to what we were saying in the topic before, that can be very advantageous, is if you can discover what your priorities are and continue to focus on it, then you'll start paying attention to it everywhere. You'll start finding opportunities everywhere. I can't tell you how many animal tracks I spot on a walk now, and it's not that they're suddenly there. It's just now I care about this, right? This is important to me now to look. It's important to me to get the outcome that I've set out to get. And so you can insert, ambition X for whatever it may be to people listening, and just utilize that to your advantage.
No, yeah, I completely agree with that. And then, cause I don't know, I just feel like there's so many, I don't know. I feel like this is a really good podcast in the sense of I feel like we just touched on so many topics, and then we're
it's perfect.
And then as soon as we're farther down the road, we touch back with something that we just talked about.
I say it on my show all the time, and I'm gonna have to. My friends make fun of me when I say I'm coming full circle here.
Oh yeah.
But no, I like it. I like it. I'm gonna maybe start a game or something where listeners can tell me how much I said a cliche phrase of mine and just embarrass myself. But
no, I mean, hey, dude, that's so I have musical performances on this podcast too, and
yeah.
I've just recently started introducing them. So obviously every song kind of has a build up to it, and so I get my reverb up and a whole bunch of stuff, and I have put a whole radio voice on. But I've been trying to, I have this
radio voice.
Yeah, exactly. I have this new one where I'm trying to make "Let It Rip" before they do a song be my catchphrase, and some of my
like a stinger. Let it rip.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, so I've been trying to do that, but I just think it's funny because I think when you're growing up, and your friends make fun of you, you're more maybe I shouldn't do it, and then I think you get to a certain point in your 20s where you're like, this is my life. I'm gonna do whatever you want.
Do you know what though, man? I'm gonna interrupt you because some people go their whole lives not making that transition, which is a tragedy. The transition of, I don't care what people think of me. I still have friends, in their mid to late 20s who won't do certain things out of fear of judgment. And to me, that's the biggest tragedy in the world. So for someone like you saying that, I think that's that comes naturally to you, which is good for you. That's amazing. But I think for a lot of people, it's really, that's tough. Right?
Yeah. No, yeah. And I think I wouldn't even say it came naturally because I'm 28 right now, but I feel it got to the point where I think when I turned 25, it's kind of when I realized I stopped getting so necessarily happy about birthdays in the sense of I was oh, party, birthday, come on, everybody. It kind of was I'm 25. Yeah.
I got responsibilities now. Yeah,
exactly. And so ever since then, it's kind of my mind's changed, and it was since then I've kind of was just I'm gonna do what makes me happy, because at the end of the day, if my friend thinks this one thing that I'm doing is stupid or silly or whatever it may be, that's my one friend's opinion, and that shouldn't affect my happiness. You know what I mean?
And you know what else too is why, not to disrespect your friends or anything.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I've had experience. I've cut ties with a lot of people who used to be really good friends of mine, just because our values don't align anymore, or they're living a life that I didn't, or saying things or doing things that I didn't really want to be a part of anymore. And for me at the time, that was tough. It's tough to grow apart from people, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely
But
is,
I think it's important to substitute those losses with people who are more like-minded. Because at the end of the day, like, do you really want a friend who's saying what you're trying to do is stupid? You know, like, what's the point of that? Because I really believe that no one will ever say or do anything to you that isn't a direct reflection of how they feel about themselves.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I feel like when people are saying those things, it kind of is more of like, it's the shell that they've built around themselves versus around you. It's like you're expressing yourself, but because maybe they feel a certain way, like that they don't want to express themselves or whatever it may be, you know what I mean? And I think like my group of friends is kind of funny in the sense of like, I've known most of my friends since I was like 8 years old. Like we have a group message with like 14 people, and it's like, we're all still really good friends, but it kind of,
that's cool.
But it kind of happened to where like, we almost all grew together in the sense of like, I mean, for a long time, I mean, just guy group of friends talk shit. You know what I mean? That's kind of just guy culture. You know what I mean? And we have fantasy football league where that is still in like 150%. You know what I mean? But it's of course we got to a point into our friendship to where it's almost like we used to like make fun of it. People, and now it's like complete opposite to where like you're rooting for people, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You're rooting for your friends. And I think like if you're around somebody who, let's say they're also a photographer, but they're a little better than you, but they don't want you to be better than them. It's like you don't want to be around that type of people. You want to be around people.
I was just gonna say it's crab bucket syndrome, if you know what that is.
Oh, to explain it, what is crab bucket syndrome?
The crab bucket syndrome. It's so this is a real phenomenon. Like if you put it sounds kind of mean, but if you put a group of crabs in a bucket and like filled it to the top with live crabs, and one crab starts to leave the bucket to freedom and get out, the other crabs pull it back down.
Oh,
that's a real thing. You can look at an analogy. Crab bucket syndrome. So I mean, the point being, like, you don't want to be around those people, right? And I was around people like that who, you know, if you were making moves towards, you know, expressing yourself or towards living a kind of life that you wanted to live and you got like made fun of for it, you get to a point where you're like, who needs you, man? Like, what's the point? And the ironic thing now is that those people are doing nothing, right? And not to be like spiteful or vengeful or anything, but it's just like, you kind of got to get the attitude of who's laughing now. Like, you're going to hate on me for going for things in my life, for living the life I want to live. Like, how much, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, look up crab bucket syndrome, dude. It's a real thing.
No, I'll have to look that up. That's funny. And then, so I mean, I feel like we're just talking about, you know, just both of our experiences through photography and just through life in general. And a common question that I ask my guests is like, what's the best advice you've been given? And so I'm just curious your take on it.
The best advice I've been given, and
maybe not even best advice, but you know, some advice that really stuck out to you.
Yeah, I got one right now. And I used to be a victim of this, and it's, we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 10 years. I think a lot of the time we see on the news or on social media someone who blew up overnight, right?
Whatchamacallit, what's that dude? The good dude drinking cranberry juice.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, that's a prime example of
right.
Like,
and then, but then everyone goes, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And the reason that guy blows up and he's on the news and stuff like that is because it's a pure anomaly. Like 99.999999999 continued.
Yeah.
Have to, like, no one who's on the top of their industry in anything got there easy. Like, everyone's struggled. Everyone's grinded. So I really like that. I think, like, I'll use my friend Dave Sanford, who's an incredible photographer. He shoots for the NHL. He had these photographs that he went into one of the Great Lakes near his hometown, and he got these incredible, very abstract photos of, waves bouncing off the pier, and they blew up. Like, the Weather Channels picked it up. He was getting interviewed by, national news networks. And people were like, oh, it's so crazy. Like, you blew up overnight. And he's like, I've been shooting for 30 years. Right? Like, I work for the NHLPA. I've been lugging gear on the subway since I was like in my 20s. It's like, I did not blow up overnight. But so that really speaks to like what people see and what actually happened. So I don't know. I really like that. Underestimate what we can do in 10 years and overestimate what we can do in a year. And it just also speaks to setting realistic and attainable goals. I mean, if you set these mammoth outcomes that you're trying to achieve, you're not going to hit them, and then you're going to get rattled, right? And you're going to want to stop.
I've totally I don't know who you had on recently, but it was some girl who also had a podcast too, or some woman.
Yulia.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yulia.
So she was really that. I think that was one of my favorite podcasts that you've done yet. Just in this, maybe I related more because she had a podcast too. I don't know. You know what I mean? But just the different takes on it. Like I'm trying to think. Like how she was saying, like everyone's trying to reach out to National Geographic, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, maybe you should reach out to something that's more attainable. And I mean, I don't want to use like myself as an example, but I'm going to use me reaching out to you on this podcast as an example. You know what I mean? Like you're someone that like, I look up to, but it's not that it was maybe out of my reach to contact you. And so I followed you. I don't even know how we started talking to each other. But
I'm not sure either. I think you just said you listened to the show and you wanted to do a chat like that. And I was like, let's do it.
yeah, exactly. And I liked how in that same podcast you talked about how you can kind of tell what someone's intentions are when they're reaching out to you, whether it's
especially
an email
in a pitch,
or in a pitch and stuff like that. So, I mean, I kind of just am curious because, I mean, obviously I sounded, genuine enough. And I mean, we're having a great conversation as it is. So, yeah. But like, how do you, personally, how do you go about like, not necessarily, I'm not asking like how you judge people, you know what I mean? But how do you tell when someone, when you think you can vibe with someone or whatever it may be?
I don't know. I do a lot of trusting my gut, like especially going back to, I'll bring it back, I promise, but going back to like wildlife photography, a lot of times you can go left, you can go right. And it's not really,
huh?
Yeah, and it's not really a brain decision at that point. You kind of get to the point of like intuition. So I think a lot of the time, like I've gotten to a point where I can tell people that I vibe with and people that I don't. And then I think other times you got to sometimes let leopards show their spots for better or worse, if that makes sense. I really like to give people the benefit of the doubt right out of the gate, and take what they say at face value. It's like, if I get the impression that you're a really good person, I hope that you continue to prove me right. And if I get the impression that you're not, I hope you prove me wrong type thing. But I think taking what people say, and that's not meant to sound like I'm on a high horse or anything. That's just like rules for how I like to associate with others. But I think that's just like a really good attitude to have when letting people into your circle, especially whether it's to do a podcast together, whether it's to go shoot together, whether it's to start a business together. Just like really good practice.
No, and I think for me, it's like whenever I put myself in situations that maybe like I'm a little uncomfortable in the sense of like, I was a little nervous before this podcast. Obviously, we've never met. We've only known each other like via social media. But I think it's really important.
I could be a total scumbag.
Yeah, for all I know, exactly. And I could have been like, gotcha journalism or something along those lines.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, but I think it's like important because I don't really believe in I don't know, like let's say like I don't know. I've been like struggling with this recently because I don't believe in like necessarily like good energy or like you know what I mean? I don't know what I necessarily
like
believe.
In the voodoo sense?
No, not in the voodoo sense, but I'm saying like whenever you're around somebody and like this conversation, it's like inspiring to me and like whenever you
so you got to trust that feeling is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like when you're just around people who are kind of pushing you and maybe they do something similar that you do, but through this podcast, it's like, and with each interview that I have, and you probably feel the same thing too, you almost feel like charged afterwards, right? You almost feel like, okay, I got a good boost right now. I'm going to use this. And I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily, either they're afraid to take those leaps, and it's just really, I don't know, it's reassuring when people feel that same way with you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And sometimes you have those, it doesn't happen often, but like if you have an episode after where you're just like, that did not go the way I had hoped it went, right? Because like I've had a couple of those, and that's just the way it goes, man. Like sometimes you're gonna get things that you did all the right things, all the right preparation, you set yourself up to win, and it just kind of didn't go the way you wanted it to go. And it's kind of just like an accept and move on type of thing. But no, I know what you mean about feeling charged, especially like with the podcast I do. Like I feel like I'm the luckiest dude because I get to hear the content 3 times. I get to hear it recording. I get to hear it, edited. And then I get to potentially, if I'm bored on a drive, I'll listen to it again just to like recap.
And I think it's good to do that, though. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times, like, so I have this, one of my best friends who helps me out. He edits the audio of it, and I'm forever grateful for him. He just does it. No charge. Shout out to Duffy. But
Nice.
He's helped me get this whole setup, you know what I mean? In the sense of making it sound as good as it does. But I think just in general, like you're saying, surrounding yourself with people who, I don't know, like I feel lucky too, because I feel at the end of the day, I'm the one benefiting from. I mean, maybe everyone else who's listening is
and
benefiting
all your
from
listeners,
it.
of course. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But you never like. I mean, like podcast stats kind of. I mean, I feel like they could do better with podcast stats. I'm like, they only go based on downloads. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, what is?
I don't
this?
even know what a download is, man. All I care about is if the graph is still going up, and if I'm still getting messages from people that say, "Hey, this inspired me" or "This helped me." That's all I really care about.
No, exactly. But I just saw you got to 10,000 downloads recently. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got like under. Yeah, I was just happy. I got 1,000 downloads under 20 episodes. Like, I think, I don't know, this will be probably 21. But yeah, exactly. It's just like little things like that. It's just reassurance. And it's not
little
even
wins,
like,
man.
I don't care about the downloads, but it's just good to know that, like, hey, people are listening. Like, I'm just like, and it's kind of cool not knowing. And do you ever look at your, like, where people are listening to it and you're like, huh, like, I don't know. For me,
yeah,
I have
like Sri Lanka or like Japan. And I'm just like, whoa, that's cool.
Yeah, I have like a bigger fan base in Anchorage, Alaska. And I like, in the beginning of my podcast, I always like, hey, Anchorage, Alaska people, I'd really love like if you just message me, because like I want to know like, why you find my podcast interesting, since like the main focus is I'm in California and I'm in the Central Valley of California, which I kind of pitched to you. But it's just like the center of California, and it's where all like 80% of the farming and I'm gonna mess up this fact, but we'll just say like it's like for sure 50% of the farming in the world is done in this Central Valley of California.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, but it's like no one thinks about that when they think of California. You know, it's L.A.
No, I think of like people surfing in Venice Beach and just like
what's up,
democratic,
dude?
And yeah. No, we won't get into politics because like that'll be a forever episode. But
no, exactly.
To what you were saying, just like about, I guess, stats. I had this thought I've been not trying to preach, but trying to influence a little bit on people, is that like we're in such a day and age where we focus on quantitative metrics. That's quantitative metrics for everything. Like you go on a run, you look at your Fitbit and how many steps you got, how many kilometers you got. Like you go on social media, how many likes did I get? How many comments? And, in terms of when you're talking about stats on podcasts, and I love the numerical numbers, don't get me wrong, because, it motivates you to hit the next one, keep going. It's part of the motivation. But like, I've been really liking focusing on the qualitative metrics, in the sense of, I've been getting DMs from people who are like, oh, like this episode really helped me become like a better whatever. And I'm just like, that's just it, man. And like for people listening, like that's what your photos need to do, right? Like, yeah, if your photo gets 300 likes, but someone comments on it or DMs you about it and says like, this was really cool, like this makes me want to buy a camera, you're doing just what you're meant to be doing,
Yeah.
So like focusing on qualitative metrics is such a forgotten thing in like the day and age of quantitative metrics.
Because that's not measured. Like, you know what I mean? Quality isn't measured.
Because it's subjective, right?
Yeah.
And we love objectivity because it gives us a sense of structure and a sense of certainty. And, I think there's very few people who thrive on uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm lucky to be one of those people.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's like, oh man, I'm trying to think how to put this into words. Just like you're saying, like there's no number on quality, like because each person is completely different. It's completely is it subjective? Is that the right one?
Yeah, subjective is when it's very opinion based.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's whatever it may be, it's very subjective to someone's taste in music, someone's taste in art, someone's photography, someone's whatever your creative process may be. And I think a lot of people get stuck into whatever the mainstream media way is, or whatever the hype is in this day and age. But like we were talking earlier about how like you go on Instagram and you see like all these things, you know what I mean? Like the best work, and then you are surrounded by all these different things. But I think it's also, we're getting to a day and age, we're saying how like like it is like a really cliche society that we're living in. I don't know if I'm overusing that word, but I feel like it's also coming to a point to where the people who are being themselves and who are truly standing who are being themselves are truly standing out, because I think for a long time you didn't like Joe Rogan's a good example, and like no one thought a 3-hour podcast would be a hit. You know what I mean? Everyone was like, no one has time for that. But just like, I think just people want raw, you know what I mean? They like, we shoot in raw, but like people also want your raw emotions. They don't want this fabricated fucking bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Of course. And you mentioned there about people, or about, going on social media and seeing the best of the best and highlights of everything. I've interviewed a lot of people on my show, and I know a lot of people who don't even follow feature pages, for example, because they don't want that influence, which I think is a really cool thing. My friend Ian Jones from Pittsburgh,
I listened to that episode.
He refuses to follow feature pages just because, he's in Pittsburgh. He's a digital marketing guy. And like he's stuck. Like he's not stuck, but like he's choosing to be in Pittsburgh, and like he doesn't need to feel like he's missing out on being on a hilltop in the Faroe Islands. It's just not his thing, and he doesn't want it creeping in on his style, which I think is really admirable.
No, that is, and I don't know. It's like I'm pretty. I don't know. I'm like pretty loose on who I follow on Instagram. Like I'm like, oh, I'll give this person a follow. Like, you know what I mean? And it's not like I follow a crap ton of people, but it's just I'm not so picky. But I can kind of, I can kind of shut up. I can kind of tell. No, but like think about it. Without me following you, none of this would happen. And that's what
I'm just teasing you.
No, I know. It's like the serendipity of it all. Like,
yeah. I mean,
but go on.
There's something to be said for digital minimalism too. I don't know if you've come across that concept. Just like, also take the sense of minimalism, like physical minimalism, like in your house, like when you start getting rid of clutter and things that you don't.
And I'm sure you went through a lot of that, in the sense that you live in a tiny house, right?
Exactly. Like you can only fit functionality, right? Like there is a TV beside me, but like functionality. And I like to transfer that to the digital space in terms of who I follow. So like my criteria are, if I saw you on the street, would I say hello to you? If the answer is no, I unfollow them right away. Number 2 is, does this person's content inspire me? Or does it make me feel bad about myself? And if it's the latter, then I'm gone. And then the last one is, does this person uphold values that I get down with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not in the sense of like, are they going back to politics, like Republican, but just like, are they an asshole? Pretty much is like,
no one. I feel like no one wants to be around assholes, and the assholes don't know they're assholes. So
exactly. So I mean, there's something to be said for also keeping like a clean space, because you're going back, coming full circle. Here we go to what we were talking about instituting a little bit of control in what you consume. Like that's an opportunity for you to diligently carve out what you want to consume and decide. Like it gives you the power back as well. But I know what you mean. It can be tough, like, because there's so many cool people, and there's going to be an infinite supply of cool people online and Instagram that just like, you want to follow tons of people, but like it does get to a point, in my opinion, where it's just too much and like it's overwhelming. It's like, I cannot keep up. It's like I follow 950 people, and I'm trying to picture 950 people in a room, and like that's a couple university lecture halls, right? Like, that's a lot of people, man.
Yeah.
Like some schools, some colleges have 2,500 people in them. Like, could you imagine like, walking around walking around campus with a physical picture, just like to everyone, I don't know. It's a lot, but I mean, it's coming full circle again. It's entirely subjective, right? Like what's right for you.
Yeah, and I think obviously that depends on each person. And like you're saying, your buddy from Pittsburgh, he doesn't want to follow feature counts because he doesn't want that to influence his creative process. Whereas somebody might follow feature accounts, let's say, who's just starting out because they want to be motivated. So it's all is subjective to
entirely
the person. And and I don't know. I think that what I want to kind of touch on before this ends is you often talk about Clubhouse and how it's like kind of like it's like what social media is supposed to be. And I have Clubhouse. I've listened to a few rooms, and it's funny to me because I like Brett Blakely a lot too, and I think he's a buddy of yours as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm a big fan of his too. And I've been in a couple Clubhouses with you and with him, and although I have my own podcast, I have this like weird anxiety of like talking in a Clubhouse, and I don't know why that is. You know what I mean? Like it's funny because like I have a podcast where all I do is talk.
Yeah.
But when you're in a room full of people, it's almost like even like it's like before this started, I was nervous. Now I'm pretty loose and chill. But
in this, you have the ability to like pause or like redo. In there, it's like if you mess up, like it's no taking it back, you know?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times I like start a sentence and I'm like, where are you going with this? And then I catch you right on the downturn. But
that's all good.
So I guess what your opinion of Clubhouse and just what do you think it's doing for social media or just for people in general?
So I'm on a big roller coaster with Clubhouse. In a lot of my recent podcasts, and when I say recent, that's probably like a month to 2 months ago, I'm like, everyone on board the Clubhouse train. And I still think it is a great platform. I think it has run into some problems recently in the sense of, so first of all, I'll start with a positive. It's good in the sense of it eliminates the perceived value effect, right? Where you land on somebody's page and they're instantly an expert because they have 40,000 followers. I mean, you can go and check Instagram and stuff like that. And it gives you the ability to choose what content you want to consume based on the title and description of the room. However, I think we've gotten to a point where there is a lot of people who are moderating rooms who are not experts on the subject, which can be dangerous. I think just be careful with what you're consuming. Like, check out the credentials. Like, if you're following, somebody who's doing a room on conservation in nature, and then you go to their page and there's no projects they've worked on or, things like that. It really makes me ask, okay, like, what are they hosting this room for? Because they actually care about nature and conservation, or because they're using it as a crutch to gain more of a, I guess, following in that app. So I think there needs to be some sort of certificate or something that authenticates who is an expert in what field they're talking about.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And if there's not, then at least you give people the choice to listen to an opinionated room. Right? Like the rooms that I've hosted, I would consider opinionated. Like I always start every room on Clubhouse. I haven't done one in a while, but like, I'm not an expert in this field. Like, pure disclaimer, like, these are my thoughts and opinions. Like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm just a guy who shoots wildlife. Here's what I think about the world. Right. But a lot of people don't do that. So I think just be like careful and just know what you're consuming, just like anything. Right.
No, exactly. And I think like what you just said right there, like, I'm just a dude and you're just trying to, tell your thoughts and stuff on life or on this subject.
Right.
This is how I'm perceiving it. And so like my little tagline on my website is just a dude with a camera trying to capture the world as I envision it, because everyone's trying to capture the world as they envision it. It's just everyone sees things differently. And if I think your podcast made me way more comfortable with whether with Photoshop and photography, there's like a ongoing internal battle with myself of, you know what I mean? Like, is this okay? And like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because it's if I think it's okay, you know what I mean? Exactly. But I think it was just like, until I like, I don't know who it was, but some guy on your podcast was talking about how like he like adds fake skies. He does all this like crazy stuff in Photoshop. And it was just made me feel like, oh, okay, dude, like you shouldn't feel so guilty about putting a fake sky in like every now and then. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like I strive to do that, but it just made me feel okay with, like, I felt like a fraud when I posted it. And if it did well, I'm like, it's because of that sky that it did so well. You know what I mean? Right.
It comes down to like, is the sky replacement what's selling the photo? If it's not, you're cool. And if you're using it legally, perfect.
No, exactly. Oh, camera. And then, I don't know. I think it was just interesting. I'm trying to think, Well, I don't know. I lost my train of thought, honestly. But see, that's what I'm talking about. I fucking start conversation.
You're just excited. You're just full of exuberance and enthusiasm. And then we'll chalk it up to that. That's what I'm picking up.
No, exactly what it is. And then as a podcast host as well, do you ever like worry about like silence? Because I think a lot of times, like I call it dead space. Like if it goes like a little too long, I'm like, I need to say something. Like even though if it's a natural pause, you know what I mean? It's just I feel like I need to say something.
Was that unnatural?
No. See what I mean though? But like just
I did it on purpose.
Just a hint of a pause.
Because I don't know why people are so uncomfortable with silence. Like picture in your school when you're a kid and there's like an assembly and like there's that somebody, or when you're even like, this sounds horrible, but like during a moment of silence, there's always somebody who's just like, or like needs to shuffle or something because it's so unsettling, right?
Yeah.
I think because, and this is why so many people I think have problems sleeping, right? Like when you're alone with your thoughts, even if it's for like, maybe not in the sense of the podcast, but just like silence in general is unsettling because it leaves you with nothing, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because silence is what we're like necessarily supposed to be hearing. Not supposed to be, but silence in the sense of like we're not supposed to, not that we're not supposed to, but we weren't like we didn't evolve with music, with all these distractions with us. But at the end of the day, it seems like maybe it's because we have all these things all the time that when we get silence, our body doesn't know how to react to it because we're so full of putting whatever not silent is into our bodies.
Yeah. I mean, like think about millions of years ago, like before language, people just kind of like grunted and there was a lot of facial and body language. But I don't know. I like silence, like especially like think of your favorite song. Like there's a lot of space in that song.
Yeah.
Even in a photo, like there needs to be space, right? If you just
can't be overwhelmed.
Packed a ton of shit into a photo, it's not going to look good. It's like sometimes less is more. And like even in like negotiating with people, like if you're the first to speak, you lose a lot of the time.
Yeah. Because the other person gets to kind of sit there and take it in.
Yeah, like if you say something and then I just kind of sat here and was like, you're thinking, oh shit, maybe I should say something to sweeten the deal, and then like you've already lost, right?
Yeah,
like that little negotiation. I don't know. It's cool.
No, I completely agree with that. And then, so I have a quote written down, something that you said on your podcast, and it stuck with me because I'll just say it. It's when you buy something, you're voting for more of this stuff in the world. And I just think that's a really like interesting. I don't know. It's a really interesting aspect or way to look at things because I think a lot of the times you're just like, oh, I'll just buy this, whatever. Oh, I'll just buy this, whatever. But when you like really sit and think like, I'm spending money for this product to continue to.
You're voting for
world.
It. Like I want more of that. You know, and when you disregard a certain potential purpose because of whatever factor, you're voting for less of that because it doesn't align with your values, right? This isn't a matter of right or wrong. It goes back to what we were talking about of like putting more of what you value into the world. Like for me, going into a grocery store, it's painful because, you know, like I try to buy things that are packaged in glass or are packaged in paper because like I can't stand the plastic problem. So like if I'm paying an extra $1 for whatever that's in a jar of glass, like I'm voting for less plastic. That's at least the way like my mind works. Like, or if I even buying a camera, man, you're voting for more creativity in the world. You can take it so far as the stock market. Like if you buy Coca-Cola stock, maybe it's at a great price. Maybe it's a great company. It's going to make you a ton of money, but you're voting for more sugar in children. You're voting for an obesity pandemic. You're voting for plastic. Coca-Cola is the #1 plastic producer in the world. Like you're voting for all those things based on your purchase. Like there's nothing that has more influence than the consumer, in my opinion. Like if everybody stopped doing a certain thing, companies would change, right? And it comes down to the idea of, oh, I'm just one person. What's it going to do? Which I hate so much. I put my fists on the table. I hate that when people do that. Like, oh, I won't vote. I'm just one person. Or like I can't do anything about climate change. Why bother? Or I can't do anything about, it goes on and on. So like, yeah, I mean, I guess it goes to asking yourself, what impact does this thing I'm about to do have on society, on the environment, on myself, on my own finances, right?
Yeah. And I think it's just a good point to bring up because I think people don't think of it that way. You know what I mean? You think, oh, I'm just gonna, buy whatever it may be, a Coca-Cola bottle or invest in Coca-Cola stock or whatever. But they don't think of like the outcome. And I think a lot of times, like, it's obviously hard to think about the future and the environment and things like that. And like, it is easy to say, oh, I'm one person. I'm one person.
It lets you off the hook.
Yeah, yeah. It mentally lets you off the hook, but it really shouldn't because at the end of the day, it's not going to be one person's fault that, let's just say humans don't exist on the earth anymore or something crazy like that. You know what I mean? It's going to be our whole fault as a society. Yeah, you know what I mean? There's not one country whose fault it is, one state whose fault it is. It's just going to be us together. At the end of the day, it's all humanity. And wow, full circle to to humans in general. But
yeah. No, man, it's so true because you make a lot of moves as small parts coming together make a big machine, really.
No, exactly.
And I think I've said this before, I think the worst thing you can be is a hypocrite. Like, for example, if you say, we'll go back to we won't get too much into going back to investing. If you say people who eat meat are the worst, like they're wrecking the planet, and then you go and put your money in the S&P 500, which has McDonald's in it. Like, you're a hypocrite, right?
Yeah.
So I think it comes back to people asking themselves on a very micro level, what is this thing I'm about to do? What is its impact in the greater scheme of things? And then how can I share that value either with my art or with a podcast or with an interview, with a blog? How can I share that value set to see more of that change in a way that doesn't ram it down people's throats so that they get defensive and polarized, right? Because
yeah, for sure.
You have to let people come to their own conclusion. And this is not about right or wrong, but if you want to have influence and you believe truly that your value set is leading towards a better world, then you need to let people come to that decision on their own and maybe adopt some of the things that you are doing rather than criticizing. Because when you criticize people, you're taking a shot at their ego and their sense of identity, right? And when you try to take that from somebody, you're putting an animal in a corner, right? They have nothing left and they have nothing else to do but try and defend themselves, which is usually an attack or an offensive thing. Just look at politics around the world, people who are polarized on either side, right? Like it's a premium example, right? I know we're wrapping up, so again, we won't go down that, but just that's how extreme it can get, though. You know what I mean?
No, I do know what you mean. And it's so crazy in the world that, and most political systems, or for sure in America, it's ridiculous that there's left or there's right. There's no.
Right. I mean, I don't know much about it, but just because I only get fed what's on, Twitter.
No, yeah, but I mean, the left is against the right, and I mean, you know what I mean. That's what it's spit out. You know what I mean. But at the end of the day, it's I think 80% of Americans are probably in the middle, but it's the 10% on each side that's pulling the others, the other side, and there's no middle ground, and it's just so ridiculous. And I think that with that same thing, it's everyone in life has their own opinion on everything, but no one's opinion necessarily is right. Maybe there's right factual parts of each person's opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's it's called an opinion for a reason.
Right. I mean, right and wrong and fact and fiction is all just a construct, really.
It's all man-made. You know what I mean?
It is. I mean, there's obvious ones like murder is wrong and things like that. But I mean, it's really, I think what it comes down to, I don't know if you were trying to wrap up and I've gone on too long, but
no, you're good. Whatever.
If I could summarize it, it really comes down to living your truth, right?
Yeah, no, completely. And I think that it takes a lot of things for someone to realize what their truth is, or just that it's okay to have a different opinion or have your own personal opinion. And I think a lot of people too often are argumentative in proving that their point is valid when it's your point can be valid and my point can be valid. We don't have to have this, my point's invalid because yours is valid. It's there could be good sides on both sides. But I think too often people are trying to choose one side.
Right. And I think photography and other creative outlets can be a great way to find your truth.
Oh, exactly. And I was going to say earlier when you're talking about Clubhouse, it's like you're saying how people have all these credentials and things like that, and you never know necessarily who's legit, maybe who's not legit.
Like who's an expert on the subject you're speaking about, right?
Yeah. And the thing I really like about photography is that like your credentials don't necessarily matter. Like I really believe that. I'm sorry, but like you can be the best photographer in the world and learn everything from YouTube. You know what I mean? And I think that photography is one of the few subjects that it's like you can be a great photographer and never have went to school, or videographer, you know what I mean? Never have went to school, never done anything, just picked up the trade. And I think me and you are both somewhat examples in the sense of we both necessarily didn't go to school for photography or videography, but it's something that we're passionate about. And if you're passionate about something, you're gonna be more willing to do that thing versus something that you're not into.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? And
if you find yourself suffering through something and continuing to do it, I think you should cue in on that. That's like part of your purpose, right? Like,
yeah.
Because I mean, there's been a lot of things, and I'm sure you can relate, where you start something and you think you're way into it, and then you stop doing it, and you feel like shameful because you're like, you thought that was the thing, you put so much effort and time into it, and you're like, man, like when am I gonna find my thing? But like, photography as an example, it's just like I could have 10 bad days in a row of photography, but I'm still gonna go and do it.
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
Which is you cue onto okay, this is where I'm supposed to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
No, I completely agree. And Seth, I think this is a great place to wrap it up.
Right on.
I just want to say thank you, dude. I really appreciate you making it. I really had a great conversation. I think that we touched on a good amount of topics.
Yeah, we did. Am I your first Canadian guest?
Yeah, you're definitely my first Canadian. This is my first out of country guest. You know what I mean?
Oh, I hope you didn't mind the virtual, and I hope people didn't mind a boot. And I don't think I said A once.
I don't think you said A once, but just to end it, you can. But Seth, once again, thank you, dude. I really appreciate it. If you ever need a guest, just let me know.
We can extend the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to force that. You know what I mean? But
no,
it would be honored. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we'll chat.
Okay, Seth, dude. Thanks again, man, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, man.
Alrighty. This is it. Real talk and whatnot.
Real talk. That's it.